All right, here we go. We are live. What's up, EDU300? This is Billy, and I'm broadcasting here live from San Diego. Tonight we have the amazing Mike Lewis with us. Mike Lewis, he teaches 5th grade for Cohasset Public Schools. It's just outside of Boston. His interest in visual design began while creating math lessons as a member of the Learnzillions Dream Team, where his videos remain the site's most viewed. As a multimedia storytelling specialist, he has worked on design and literacy-related projects with Scholastic Reading Clubs, the Gates Foundation, Redesign Challenge, Stanford University Institute of Design, the LA Unified School District, and Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. And for more on Mike's work, you can visit his website. That's lewis5.org. You can connect with Mike on Twitter at 145lewis. Mike's an Apple Distinguished Educator. He's become a really great friend of mine, and he's just a brilliant guy. He's an awesome guy. He loves kids, and he loves what he does. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate your time and coming to hang with us.
Thanks, Billy, for inviting me. I'm really excited to kind of share the work that we've done this year in my classroom, especially because I, towards the end of last year, put together a grant to look at how we could use media creation on top of documentary and the reflection process for students, so that we can try to tie some of these unbelievably complex skills that they're putting together into other disciplines. And that the key to that was going to be having them interview each other frequently and reflect on their process. And so that got off to a good start through our visual vocabulary project. So let me show you just a little bit of what I'm talking about as far as the reflection process goes. Are we all set up? If I hit play, Billy, are people going to be able to see the video?
Yeah,
all right.
We're totally all set. Hey, is the mic sound okay out there, everyone? You can give me a thumbs up if you can hear him loud and clear. We're good.
Okay, great.
All right, and if you guys have any questions, pop it in the chat box. You know, we can stop Mike as we go. You know, as much as we want to hear Mike and hear him talk, these sessions are for you. So if you need any more clarification, don't be shy. Ask the questions.
Absolutely.
All right.
So,
did everybody see that? Is everybody good there? You able to see that? No? Okay, so let's just make sure. If everybody goes on the toolbar to the left, we're experimenting here with the YouTube app, and I'm not sure if that popped up on your screens. If it didn't, go ahead and scroll over to the toolbox on the left and hover your mouse over those 3 dots, and there'll be an option that says Add Apps. And you're going to add the YouTube app. When you've done that, just give me a thumbs up or pop it in the chat box. Okay, cool. Abby's cool. Abby's cool. And Mike, just, you know, we got Abby over here while they're doing that. We have Angela. Jeff.
Hey, Angela. Hey, Abby.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
And Laura's here as well.
Hey, Laura.
Hi.
And if this doesn't work out, we can go to plan B, guys, where we would actually just go ahead and do a screen share. But this...
Billy, you muted your...
Oh.
I think, yeah, there we go. We'll get to that one in a second.
Did I mute myself?
You muted yourself.
Great work over here.
Thank goodness.
Okay, so do you want me to keep going? You want me to talk a little bit about the video?
Okay, I want to make sure everybody's got the YouTube
Okay.
add-on. Is there a particular video we should be looking at? Okay, so if you click on that YouTube add-on, you should see some videos. And when Mike plays a video, it will pop up for you. We cool with that? All right, nice. All right, Mike, sorry about that, man.
Not a problem. So the idea behind that video was once they were familiar with the visual vocabulary process, which is something that we spend good amount of time on at the beginning of the year. They basically collect and tab words from their independent reading book, and then they have that list that they can go through, look up the words, and decide which word they want to make a slide for. And once they were kind of secure with that, I set up a rotation in 3 groups, and they went through and recorded each other answering a few questions. And it was really a neat experience for me through the reflection process to hear a lot of insights that I just wouldn't have caught throughout, circulating through the classroom. And then the other piece that the video reflection kind of came out of was, as I started taking videos in the classroom more over the last couple of years, I started to see, as soon as the camera came out, everybody kind of elevated their level just a bit. And so the premise for the interviews and the reflection piece was that the more cameras we have, the more students have access to the cameras, the higher quality the discussion will be, because when somebody turns the camera on, they will turn it up a notch. So that was how we worked in the reflective piece. And so now let's transition to, okay, we've got a good sense of how the equipment works. So I gave them, the next assignment was to really look at how we use video and videos to tell the stories based on how we're framing our shots. So the assignment was very broad in general. It was make a video to represent a vocabulary word, and that was the only direction I gave them. The skills that we were working on was purposefully mixing close range shots, wider angle shots to establish setting, medium shots to give context, and then focusing on the closer details. So this next video, Lurking, is let me go through 3 videos before I kind of put them into any context. So this is the first one for Lurking. Okay, so basically you get the point there, lurking here, lurking there, lurking everywhere. But in that example, they started playing around with slow motion. And then we could talk about, once they started experimenting with that, we could talk about, why do we use this purposefully. So there's lurking. What I love about that one in particular is that, here a student who planned and managed that project, he was the first one to experiment with maybe I can use this as an excuse to go outside and play. And so, of course, I was 100% on board for that. And you have, he had a very thoughtful plan. And here's a student who probably hadn't sat down or really taken charge of, his direction in education so much. And so now he had this great idea. He brought all of his friends out, and really directed and managed the project. And so, you know, here he's created it, planned it for a number of people. And so at that point he went, well, who's going to videotape it? And so somebody who was kind of in a lull in one of their other projects came out with him. And as I watched and overheard their conversations as he was putting it together, he had to explain to the person taping exactly how and why he wanted things filmed the way, you know, from the angles that he did. And so here was that, again, another opportunity for him to reflect on the purpose behind his project. And it also, you know, kind of started creating this, well, if, you know, here's your plan, your thoughtful plan that took a, you know, a class period, communicated with purpose to another student who was just there to help out. Okay, so let me just show the last one, and then I'll put kind of all three in perspective. Okay, so that one, you know, it was at that point where I was starting to try to build in the reflective process to the video vocabulary, and that was kind of an off the cuff because I happened to be, you know, filming around the classroom, and I caught that moment where Hannah kind of says, "Ooh, you know, what if we had this moment where it's black and white and they see color?" And she turns to me and says, "Wait, can we do that?" And I thought she meant, you know, can we have a black and white scene? I'm going, yeah, we can add a dissolve and go from black and white into color. And she goes, no, no, no. Can we have color and black and white in the same scene? And I went, well, you know, I have no idea. I would assume so, given that it's pretty powerful recording equipment. Let's go see. And so we had to talk about, at that point, to solve that problem, we had to talk about what was the key word that we were going to search for in addition to the software, which was Final Cut, online to get that tutorial, and we came up with the word isolation. And so once we got color isolation, we found the tutorial and basically figured it out together. So now at that point with iridescent, I'm watching it. This is like this was the order in which these videos came together. It was that first lurking and then ostracized. Then we saw, you know, iridescent. And as I'm going back. You know, as I'm going back over it, let me see if I can just show you. So, as I watched it, I'm looking at the, you know, again, remember the assignment was create a representation of your vocabulary word, and so here we have the word iridescent represented very metaphorically through this process, and so, but if you look at the minute and 30 seconds of the actual video, you have the world as it is. It's black and white. You have this resistance to the call where they kind of line up and they're just going to go, you know, what can we do about it? Let's just continue on with our day. Then you have the inciting incident where Amanda looks out the window, sees the magical object, which in this case is the color, mentors the rest of the group over by calling them. Then they cross the threshold, and there you have the close-up on the door opening. They enter the magical world. They complete a series of 3 challenges, and then you have that shot of them on the bench, which is like representative of them changing. And now that they're changed, they return to their ordinary world, or the school building, which is now in color, because they're therefore going to, you know, now that they're changed, they can change the ordinary world in which they came from. And so in a minute and 30 seconds, you have this picture, you know, pitch perfect, picture perfect hero's journey story archetype we're talking Odyssey, Star Wars, in a minute and 30 seconds by a bunch of 10-year-olds, planned, filmed, and edited in 3 days' time. And so as I'm looking at that, going, wow, this is amazing. We put it up, we put the videos as they were coming in up in the classroom, and we were able to look at this and say, look at that storyline, and immediately the first thing out of the lurking group was, I want to refilm mine. After seeing how great their story was, we were able to talk about, okay, so how is lurking different? And the student who created the lurking video was able to go, okay, I have different examples of it, and so therefore, as a class, we talked about how that's an episodic structure, where you have, here's the theme, it's organized by theme. Here's the theme here. Here's what it looks like, in the library. Here's what it looks like out on the basketball court. And then we talked about, okay, so if you can take that, thematic thread and weave it over or through a number of, through a plot, you're going to create an even more complex idea. And so they revised it to, they revised the to giving a little bit more context and around an introduction and a conclusion. I'm actually, and so there, just to give you a taste, now that they've gone back and added an additional piece of story to the introduction and the conclusion. So again, the premise here was just represent a vocabulary word. It didn't matter, I didn't give them a specific assignment, but then going back to the ostracized video, I'm looking at that one going, it's such a different story, like what is it with that? And the closer I looked at it ostracized, you have this Will by himself on the basketball court, life's all right, I hit the shot, everything's okay, but I'm going to stare off into the field in front of me and see the life that my ideal life that I've pictured here, where all of these kids are playing together, and I really want to be a part of that, but it's not to be. And so he goes back to the basketball court, hits another shot, everything's okay, but then the catastrophic event happens where the kid comes, kicks the basketball, and now he's the final shot, we see him with his head down walking away on the basketball court. And as you look at that story structure, you have this, flat, like, world, kind of everything's okay, I see where I want to be, but something catastrophic happens, and now I just wish I had my old life back. And that's a very, like, European type of story map, where it's, kind of emulates like a Kafka type plot. But of course, it's not like we're sitting there teaching the kids, okay, this is a Kafka-esque plot line, and this is the Western story arc. They had something that they wanted to communicate, and so therefore they found a pattern to communicate it. And so, it's about that time. I'm walking down the hall, and I hear, I hear the alliteration lesson happening in one of the classrooms. This is alliteration, and this is what it is, and people use that. And strategy lessons for writing are fantastic. There's nothing, nothing wrong with them whatsoever. I mean, if but when we think about where they came from, it was somebody somebody read something that worked for them and wanted to teach students how to get to that level. So, we say, look at this, here's how you do it, go ahead. Whereas what I'm seeing by really taking away a lot of the structures and directions is that they're going to authentically communicate something. They're going to internalize what they're reading, what we're talking about in class, and it's going to come out in different ways for each group. And so you see some of those different, now we have a lot of diverse storylines, so it's not who can all use this, one strategy. We start to see, okay, look at how you've done things, it's original. Now let's analyze what we can learn and apply to each other's work from that. So it was, a really interesting process because, and every time I've done a narrative with my students, for all of these years, it usually breaks down like this. You've got like 4 kids who give you something, pretty special. You've got 15 kids who get the assignment done. It's fine. whatever it is that your first holiday morning or whatever, and then you've got like 6 kids who you've just dragged through, and they've gotten something that just basically checks off the boxes. So when they're working together to create the media in this manner, everybody contributes to an idea. So in Iridescent, where Hannah really led the charge with that big moment that the story hinged around the transition to color, she provided a wealth of that, the majority of that story. Everybody else enhanced it. And so what I have to believe is that the other members in that group, who are definitely not, there are Title I students in that group, they're getting so much more out of just creating that piece all together than doing something marginal and comparing it with somebody else in the class. So I really see, if we look at the amount of information we can get on demand today, the classroom needs to be a place where we can come together and create something that's greater than any single contributor. And so that's what I'm really loving about the media, so much so that again, and this is just playing around with it, I'm going, all right, how can we do more of this? I'm loving the work that I see. I'm loving all of these other 21st century skills that are happening because they're driven and motivated. So we said, all right, next step is how can we create something? How can we create something with media that helps us understand the more complex pieces of our reading? And so that's the next few things I'm going to show you are these are rough cuts of projects that are in the making right now. So this is there's not a whole lot. I mean, I've just started playing around with these, so this is within the last couple weeks. So I'm going to start off with this 39 clues.
Hey, yeah? Mike, one question. Yeah. Angela, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? Oh, we're not hearing her. Angela, your mic's not.
Do you want to ask it, or do you know the question?
How about now?
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, definitely, Angela. Hey.
Oh, okay. Do you find that some of your students get left out or left behind because they're not a strong personality in this type of thing? Either they don't want to be on the camera or lack of technical ability, resources?
Yeah, it's interesting, and this is one of the tougher groups I've had, but there's been, remarkably, no friction. Well, I shouldn't say no friction. There hasn't been any unproductive friction. So we have, everybody. The coolest thing is everybody bounces around from group to group, lending their expertise to each other. So we have only 3 computers. We have only 4 filming devices, and it's just so naturally have they self-organized that if the computers are being used for editing, they'll go grab and they'll work on something to film. If the computers in the filming are occupied, they'll hang out and plan together. And so because they really enjoy this, they continually want to do it, and so they'll I give them this basically block at this point to just say, you know what, I don't care what project you're working on, just work on one of these media projects. And so they'll kind of flip around back and forth between the vocabulary, between the reading project, between whatever it is that they've chosen to work on. So it's really been exciting to see how they kind of manage each other and apply all of those ideas that we really try to the collaborative elements that we try to not enforce, but we try to impart on them. They're doing so because it's a function of creating something they're proud of.
And I think to kind of piggyback off that idea, Mike, it comes down to the type of community you build and the culture you build within your classroom, one where students feel comfortable and they're okay with making mistakes. And as the teacher, you have to walk that fine line of having your kids feel comfortable, but also helping them get to a spot that they can be to realize the true potential they have, kind of
Right.
unravel that potential. And some people don't see themselves in a certain light, and I know I could say the same about myself in terms of blogging and writing. I never really saw myself as a great writer, but when you have people in your PLN like Mike, who, you know, if I send over a blog, he'll take a look and edit with me. He makes me a better writer. And we have each other, and you build that community. Eventually, you can get to a place where people will be okay with making those mistakes, and knowing it's safe to make those mistakes, and that they'll truly see each other as people that they can lean on, they can use as guidance in that way. We are all learners in that classroom. It's not just the teacher. We have a lot to add to the room. Would you say that's true, Mike?
I mean, yeah, and don't get me wrong, like every morning that I'm pulling into work, like the thought runs through my head, all right, look for those signs that it's about to turn into Lord of the Flies. You know, like I constantly remind myself of that because I want to be on the lookout for that to happen. And you know, and I want to be able to, you know, we step in and help solve interpersonal problems, which of course, you know, we're in a classroom, we're in a room together. I mean, imagine being in a room 6.5 hours a day with the same 23 adults, like in that small. I mean, we would, you know, we'd be very cordial, right, and you know, passive aggressive to each other, wouldn't we? So
Jeff has a question too.
Yeah. So yeah, and I just we solve the problems as we encounter them, but I think it's what I love about the multimedia is that they need each other to produce their idea, and so you see, instead of that, you know, instead of people getting together in the atmosphere being destructive, it becomes generative because they're all getting to know each other through what they're creating.
Right. Hey, Jeff has a question too, a more of he's kind of wondering about the challenges that he faces and maybe others face. Jeff, do you want to kind of pose that in a question form, or kind of have discuss that?
I don't know if my mic's working. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We hear you now, sir.
Okay. No, I actually work in York, and we don't have a one-to-one program. We have a lot of resources available to students on mobile carts and things of that nature, but I've just wondered about, you know, some of the challenges where, you know, students are relying so heavily on media and technology that, you know, access issues, how do those impact what you're doing? But Angela's question, I think, was in a similar vein, and I think you kind of addressed that for me. You know, when you said we have 3 computers in the room, we have 4 cameras, and basically we were able to make do with that. That certainly puts to rest any questions I had about, you know, that issue.
Right.
And I just had one question earlier from one of the videos that you were showing. It looked like, and maybe it was just the way that I saw it, maybe it was, you know, a piece of paper or something on the table, but it almost looked like the tabletops in your room were like whiteboards, and the kids just scratch out ideas like right on the tabletop.
Yeah, that was something last year. Idea Paint is the company that, it was actually a Mass Challenge funded idea, and I've had their whiteboard paint, but when they came out with that clear coat that goes over anything, I tried it out, and not only is it just amazingly gorgeous, smooth surface to write on, there's something so inherently subversive about writing where you're not supposed to write that they, you know, it hasn't gotten old. So you know, the kids who don't like to write for tactile reasons have no problem jotting out things on the table. And so the other thing, you know, that first week we put them down, I went, all right, are we going to have to start drawing lines for people not to cross? And what ended up happening, for lack of a better, I wanted them to come in and use the Idea Paint purposefully at first. And so we were working on something, and I had them, like, basically, I didn't have an idea. I'm like, just copy the graphic organizer you did for homework on the table. And what I started to see was the branches started moving into, you know, their partner's territory. And when that would happen, the kid next to them would look over and go, "Oh, what are you doing?" And then they would start talking about not only their idea, but how they were organizing it. And so what I love about the tables is it really gives them the freedom to create, not just fill out the graphic organizer, but develop the graphic organizer as they go in a very, you know, even just the amount of time it takes to erase something with the swipe of a finger makes it so much more less intimidating to plan and produce with each other. So yeah, as far as what Billy was saying with the collaborative environment, every tool that we can give them to work, better together definitely pays itself off exponentially.
It seemed a nice addition to an environment where you're really trying to reinforce the idea that creativity is king and collaboration is king, and it's literally built right into the infrastructure of the classroom. That caught my eye right away.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, no, it's and again, I'm dealing with like we have an iPad 2 cart at this, but we lost 2 netbook carts over the last couple of years that haven't been replaced. And we're down to a cart of iPad 2s that are at this point are too slow to be effective anymore. So really, it's minimal technology that's been fueling some of the greatest gains in thinking I've seen this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you want me to go on to some of the reading projects?
How are we feeling, guys? Anybody have a question right now before Mike moves on?
Mhm.
All right, Mike.
And I'll
Going over to YouTube app.
Okay, so the idea there was to create some sort of book trailer for 39 Clues, and what they were going to do was they took it. We've been really focusing on synthesis through this project, and so they took the idea of 39 Clues and looked at what would that look like if 39 Clues were to take place in the world of our school, and so they came up to me and asked, can we walk around and go get some ideas for places to hide clues? And they walked around the building, would see a bulletin board, would make connections to the area around it. They wrote the clues out, and then they decided they were going to make the treasure map, put the clues on the back of the treasure map. And what I found really interesting about that piece was now they're actually creating written artifacts to live in a world that they've written or created on top of it. So you have now they're creating pieces to facilitate their reading video. Not only are they thinking deeply in a more complex manner about the book that they're reading, but they're thinking, how are we going to communicate this? How are we going to tell a story? They're working together, and it's really coming up with a lot of really new and unique ideas for writing just based on their reading. So this is a very different. This next example they're in the middle of creating. They want to create a stop motion trailer for the graphic novel Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales, and they want to print out the individual like characters from the graphic novel and put them on a green screen for that. I forget what they're going to do with the green screen, whether or not they're going to add in pictures from the revolutionary time period, or they're going to double in the background of the graphic novel and move them around. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but here's a whole different way to work. Yeah, so there you have an example of how they're starting to integrate a wider variety of different disciplines into this. Again, the idea is to create something that enables you to think more deeply about your reading. And here they are bringing in, the mathematics of the measurement. They're explaining to each other how to use the different technological skills as well as, some analog creation. And again, this is just. The direction was create a project to showcase, excuse me, to create to showcase something that you're reading. And the fact that I've backed off, or I don't know if it's the fact that I backed off, but either way, I haven't given them a lot of direction, and they're consistently creating end products that are blowing me away. And so I'll just end with this this final video of one of I think the most incredible projects for a number of reasons. But I'll talk about that. Let me just show this last one, and we'll so that one and Harrison, you know, he was a musical. He liked music. He liked music. I knew he liked music, and he was telling me that he was playing around with GarageBand. So that's when I said, oh, why don't you do imagine your book as a piece of music, or if you were going to do a musical summary of the book, how would you do that? And so he started off playing, like you said, he was playing around with GarageBand to the point where I would check in with him, and every period, he had the headphones on, he was doing something, and I would continually ask, hey, where are you with this? Where are we with this? And it was legitimately probably way too much time at this point had passed without really seeing anything. Every time I checked in with him, he would kind of give me this little bite-size, oh, I'm playing around with this character, I'm playing around with this, I'm playing around with that, to the point where I could kind of say, okay, Harrison, you got to get you got to get on this and take it more seriously. You've got to work at home. You've got to do something because you've got a lot of little things here, but it doesn't add up to anything. And it's been probably 2-3 weeks at this point. And so at that, I just kind of backed off and kind of framed it under if this was any type of project, I would probably be getting the same results with a lot of half-done pieces. Because there's not a lot of follow-through going back and forth from home, and I just laid back, and to the point where I kind of he looks busy, he looks happy, he's able to tell me pieces until finally one day when I said where are you with this, he goes, oh, I've got all of these pieces strung together, and that's when he hit play for the kids around, the kids that kind of gathered around had read the same book, Wilder Boys, and he played it. And they literally were able to say, oh, is that the part when this happens? So he really not only communicated the story to a wonderful level, he's talking about, you can see him there where he's saying, I'm playing with the tempo and I'm playing with the same notes that come back and I'm layering on more sounds later to kind of intone that there's the same character, but yet something more intense is happening. And if you hear him at the very beginning, he's like, I kind of look at, I look for bigger ideas more. It's very clear that he would have trouble, he would have a lot of trouble articulating his ideas. He has a lot of trouble articulating his ideas. And all of a sudden, you're able to see through music an incredibly complex level of thought that I never, ever would have imagined had I only asked him to explain his thinking using writing, because articulating it's clear the articulating the ideas is much more of a challenge for him, with language. So it was really interesting to see what he was able to create. And then the last piece that I had again no expectation of, which is what I love about the interviews and the reflecting, is that he says towards the end, I now look at not only did he learn how to use GarageBand and put that all together, which practically applied, to his life. But he even said, now I look at the story within the music I'm listening to differently. So it's now, we're looking at it, like an hourglass from both ends are just being, constantly filled up from, the seemingly small idea in the middle. So it's been really exciting to see what they've been able to teach me through the media that they've created. So there's a number of other projects in the works. One group has created a 2-on-2 basketball tournament using characters from the Land of Stories book. And so the main characters come in, they play Goldilocks and Red Riding Hood. Goldilocks in the book steals because she's selfish and she likes to get Red Riding Hood all riled up. So their game, that game has Goldilocks hogging the ball and taking all the shots, and fouling Red Riding Hood when the ref's not looking. So here they're taking information from one area of their reading and applying it to situations outside of just the context of reading and explaining their thinking, and they're making it really relevant to themselves. And once that happens, it's taken off as like a cultural phenomenon in the classroom where they're all inspiring and motivating each other in manners that I never, would have foreseen without this collaboration in media.
Nice. Hey, Mike, we got a couple questions coming in. Jeff,
Sure.
do you want to ask your question? Jeff's got an excellent question.
I teach a media literacy class to juniors and seniors in high school, and I mean, essentially the express purpose of the course is just teaching kids how to sort of navigate media, how to be able to read a newspaper for content, to understand. It's been around. It's not a new idea. It's been around for a long time, and I try to use sort of 5 key concepts of media literacy. But again, I teach an entire semester course, basically around these themes, and I see students in your 5th grade class, I mean, commenting with insights that, frankly, I would love to hear some of my high school students offer, about the, I messed with the tempo in this song, I was trying to produce this emotional effect, I do an entire lesson in class about sound and, how it can have this influence on a viewer and so forth. So I'm just wondering, I'm assuming, watching your students, that there's a lot of, front loading early in the year of these types of skills and instruction. I mean, that again, that's an assumption, but I guess my question is that the case, that you have to spend a lot of time really educating students about the technical aspects of how these programs work, or is it sort of in the spirit of, hey, let's figure this out, and you just find that oftentimes you let them sort of work through those challenges independently or collaboratively, if that evolves?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's something that I'll play around with, like, the the big general concepts as far as like let's say it's the filming. This is a literally it stopped at this is a wide shot, this is a close up, this is a that, and once I've kind of given them a general direction, I really do wait for them to wait for them to get into it, and then that's when I can kind of move around and push, because if you look, it's kind of based off this Renzulli triad model of gifted education, where you have this here's the exposure, and then generally it's like, okay, let's expose them to a bunch. Here's the video editing, here's the storytelling, here's what you can do. Now, what do you want to do, and let's get you the skills. So the second triad is that here, this, let's say if look at the GarageBand piece, what skills do you need to complete your goals? And then, okay, the third piece is let's go, and take those, take those skills and apply them. I kind of reverse it and expose them, wait for them to get into it, and then teach them the skills as they go, just because I feel like that's the way that it's always been most relevant to me. If you tell me I need something, I think I'm more apt to, I'm more apt to mail it in if I'm not getting something that I see the need for. And so the idea is let them create the demand for the lessons. And so once they start playing around, that's when we jump in and start saying, ooh, look what you did here. This is why, let's name it. This is why this is effective. Or, wow, look what, look at this scene. You've got the two people, let's say you've got two people talking in one frame at each other. What could you do to increase the, the pacing or the tension as the, as the scene kind of rises? And I think it really just sets the culture too of nothing is ever done, it's just due. So until somebody puts a due date on you, you go back, tinker, revise, refilm, rework, and that's been the spirit, and that's what I've seen this year. That's been the spirit of everything. It's that here's, the direction, here's where we started off. Now go back to it once you've seen something or been inspired from somebody else's project to make yours, to add that into yours as a function into whatever project you're working with.
So since Billy's probably off putting on some more sunscreen, I'm going to jump in for a second. Jeff, I thought a lot about your question. I think I put it in the chat box. Mike, that's an awesome answer. I think there's also something that can be said for the digital native nature of students who Mike and who Billy teach, who are at a different place than the students that you and I teach, Jeff, at the high school level. I think we're sort of on this cusp where high school students are not quite at the same inherent tech capacity as kids who are in elementary school right now, which I find really interesting. But shifting from there, Mike, if you have a minute, we've had a few questions from students about, basic digital storytelling apps for intro Ts and intro students. So stepping away from the group of students with an inherent capacity to work with iPad apps and other tools. What about students and teachers who have, you know, Angela brought this up earlier, a PC or limited resources in terms of licenses and tech access? What are some intro-level tools that you might recommend for our students?
You know, I've seen everything. Sorry, I'm getting an echo. You know what? As far as all of this goes, all of the media that they're creating can be created in any type of, you know, any type of basic video editing software. I don't think it really matters, you know, what it is. If I were looking to start out with digital storytelling, I might try something where you're adding images and narrating it over it. But as far as, you know, as far as those intro materials go, I only have a grasp of what I'm working with these guys, and that really comes down to, you know, to iMovie. And so I wish it could be more help when it comes down to, you know, the beginner tools. But anything that's enabling them to, you know, to create a story is, you know, it's whatever program you use, whatever you find out there, what I've seen from my kids is they'll create ways, whether it's, you know, building Legos for a stop motion or cutting out, you know, pieces of, you know, drawing an image, cutting it out, and manipulating those. They'll find ways of merging the analog and the digital to communicate something, so long as they have something that they, you know, care about effectively communicating.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. So, Billy, are you out there still?
Oh, good.
Yeah, I don't know where he went. So, Mike, this has been excellent. Do any of you guys have any more questions? Oh, there's Billy. He went inside.
Yeah, I'm running around trying to trying to get going here. I actually stayed on longer than I really could. Kind of running late here because I was just so hooked by Mike and his story and talking about digital storytelling.
So are there any final questions before we all depart tonight? No?
Well, thanks, guys. It's been a blast hanging out, sharing some of this stuff. It's been a great opportunity, too, because, like I said, this is happening kind of right in front of my eyes, so to be able to kind of, you know, share it with you, I know it's not quite so organized, but I'm really putting together what I'm seeing in the great, you know, the great skills that I'm seeing my students working on, you know, in real time right now. So thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and I think that, Mike, you're opening our eyes to the possibilities. And I think for some who are just starting out, it could be a little bit intimidating. So I really might like Mike's advice of just, you know, starting with some photos and maybe popping it in iMovie or Filmmaker or some sort of basic video editing software, and starting there with some narration. That would be a great entry point, a safe entry point, I would think. And then our hope is, with all the resources you have, that you see the possibilities and that you'll grow from there. And if anybody's struggling or needs help, you know, we're here to help you. I know Angela and Laura, you guys had a couple questions about apps and what maybe the best apps to use. Do you guys have access to storytelling software, like iMovie?
Yeah, I just bought that today.
Oh, you did? Great.
Yeah.
I think the best thing you could do is as Mike does with his students and we do with our students, is the idea of play. You know, get your idea in your mind, what you need to do. Start popping in some of those pictures. And if it's, we have a couple of tutorials. I shared one in our audio resources. One is from Don Goebel. It's iPad iMovie for beginners, and it's a great resource. Is this on the iPad or computer?
My PC or my computer right now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yep. Well, as for tonight, I think I'll talk with you further, Angela. How about that? Maybe we
okay, sounds good.
We don't want you to stress. We don't want you guys to stress. We want you to know we're here for you. We'll help you.
Well, I think there's an inherent amount of stress that comes with this. I mean, I had we've had our professional development in universal learning design, which I think that this really showcases well. And the last time the curriculum coordinator and the superintendent walked through, the curriculum coordinator asked me, this is great, but how is this helping them be prepared for the test? And I looked at her and said, yeah, that's a really good question, because I can't be we need to figure that out. And I know that Billy, the work that you guys have done to track standards and call students' attention to how it relates to your more traditional or conventional academics is going to be incredibly important. And in order to find that overlap, we need to just jump in and give it a try under the under the condition that nothing needs to work out perfectly, because it's not going to, and that is the necessity for invention right there.
And before we go, for Laura, Angela, like anybody who's having reservations about this unit, this is a learning opportunity for me as well. I let Billy take the lead here, as I haven't done too much work with digital storytelling myself, partially due to my own weird setbacks as an individual. I hate the sound of my voice and recording it, so modeling that for my student makes me uncomfortable, but this GHO tonight has made me think about going outside of my own comfort zone as a teacher and try to create some examples to share with you guys to, at least model, taking risks.
Right.
Don't think that, we're all complete experts here. This is definitely challenging my thinking as a teacher as well.
Yeah, if anybody out there, if you happen to watch this module, or Angela, or Laura, anyone who's having some difficulty, you might need some sort of extension. Again, don't sweat it. Just understand we'll work with you, and it's not necessarily about the grade. It's about changing your mindset and let you see the possibilities. So if you need some extension because of your access to software or devices or whatever it may be, shoot us an email. Some of you have, and we'll work with you. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Have a great night, you guys.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Wait, Adam, is that a question or a goodbye? Deuces. All right. Have a good night, you guys.
Good night.
All right, Mike. You're the man. Thank you.
Thank you.